Index coverage report valid. Index not submitted in sitemap. Let's press on that because I think this is very misleading if you don't truly understand what's the best practice. Because obviously looking at status valid and indexed not submitted in sitemap basically means Google has picked up certain parts of a site and has indexed it, and yet those URLs are not in the sitemap. At that moment, you need to ask two questions to yourself. Looking at these URLs, ask yourself, is that what you wanted to do? As in, did you want Google to index these URLs? If so, then place them in your sitemap for better crawling of Google search engine. Make sense? Because Google is indexing these parts of a site, and yet they are not in the sitemap. For a typical WordPress site, it is more than likely that date archives are nothing unique. And then you need to ask yourself, well, if that's the case, can I serve no index directives for certain parts of a WordPress? So basically, you've got two options looking at indexed, not submitted in sitemap. Either submitted in the sitemap or serve no index tag for a WordPress placeholder parts of a WordPress such as date archives or even tags. 99.9% of WordPress sites should not have tags indexed by Google. Now, most people who are in the SEO field, SEO specialists or SEO gurus or some digital agencies will disagree with this. Then it's best that we go and read the Google guidelines. Having date archives indexed by Google does not mean that your site has duplicate content. To avoid duplicate content, you need to serve canonical URLs, telling Google, okay, this is the source of the URL. Canonical means that originating source. Think it like that. Now, as long as the URLs in perhaps date archives, let's press on this URL. Because remember, this is date archive and it contains information that's coming from somewhere else on the WordPress. So then if the URL here has canonical tag, then you'll avoid duplicate issues on a WordPress site. So that's a given, right? And yet, that date archives, as the site becomes large or medium, and Google is accessing these URLs, it's crawling, and it's actually placed it in its index. In my example, I'll share the URL to this here if you want to learn more about the best practices, because if Google tries hard to index and show pages with distinct information, and as an example, this filtering means, for example, that if your site has regular and printer version of each article, and neither of these is blocked with no index meta tag, we'll choose one of them to list in our results. Right? Distinct information is the keyword, and date archives have nothing distinct on them. Make sense? So best practice is to serve no index tag for parts of a WordPress site with no unique information, right? So index coverage valid report, when we're seeing it, when we're seeing all green lights as in green color, submitted an index, that's great because these are the URLs in your sitemap and Google has indexed them, so that's great. But when we see index not submitted, you need to triple check them and ask yourself, well, why is that? Can I place them in my sitemap? If not, do I want Google to index those parts? If so, do those parts have distinct information? If not, serve no index tags. That's the best practice. And I'll talk with you in the next video session.